What is joy? Do you know? Or do you not know? We're going to talk about it on today's podcast. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson. I'm a ballroom dance professional, a life coach, and a peak performance expert. I'm part of a group of motivated people who are dedicated to attaining emotional mastery and unlocking our full potential. We've realized life is a dance. The ups and downs can spin you out of your mind, but it's time to take back control. It's time to become a lifer. We don't believe others are responsible for how we feel. In fact, we don't believe anyone can make us feel anything. We are a new breed of overachievers. Emotional mastery is our journey, and unlocking our full potential is the key. Welcome to the journey. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. And like we talked about on the last podcast, which if you haven't heard, you should go back and listen to that one first. But like we talked about, we're going to start talking more about emotions and what they specifically are and what their definitions are and what they mean to you. This is huge. This is a really big deal because in many instances, I think sometimes we let other people tell us the definition of what these are. Now, you might think, well, gosh, you just said you're going to tell us the definition. And I am. However, I really want you to participate in this one and think about what this means to you. What does joy mean to you? So we're going to just talk about joy today on this podcast. So what is joy? If we look up the definition, which, we all have Google on our side now. It's a new world of information at bay, right? We can pull it up in an instant. So what is the definition of joy? Simple. Joy is a state of mind characterized by a contentment, love, satisfaction, or pleasure. Well, interesting, right? Contentment, love, satisfaction, or pleasure, joy. Well, what do those words mean? Well, all of a sudden we get down a rabbit hole because then we start to think to ourselves, well, what does contentment mean? All right, well, what does satisfaction mean? What does love mean? What does pleasure mean? All of these things we've learned along the way, and we've created definitions of these ideas, these emotional states in our mind. And these help us to react and sometimes respond. And so you might think to yourself, well, what is the word react? Well, react is defined with the word respond or behave in a particular way in response to something else. And you kind of look at that and you go, well, okay, wait a second, aren't react and respond different? Well, and there are. So I've gone ahead and looked it up just for you. So there's a difference, right? And some people say there's a huge difference. The word react and the word respond essentially seem the same, right? And they're very close in terms of their definitions. But when you look into it a little bit further, you find out that maybe there's a bit more of a large difference between the word reaction and response. So what's the difference? Well, reaction tends to be a little bit more snappy, a little bit more split second and instant, whereas the word response is a bit more thought out, right? A reaction, but more thought out. So when we talk about joy or happiness or any of the emotions that we're going to talk about in the coming days, we want to think about how we react and about how we respond. In many instances, we've trained ourselves very much in our upbringing. Maybe our families, our teachers, our coaches, our surroundings have trained us to be able to react with a response. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. If you've ever learned how to do anything, and you are excellent at it, or maybe even just good at it, let's take, like we talked about in the last podcast, we talked about playing basketball and shooting a free throw. Maybe it's drawing or art. Maybe it's, it's just about anything, even with mathematics. Some people are great at mathematics. You say, what's this times this? And they have all these ideas and concepts that they can do their times tables with 3-digit numbers and pop out the number really quick because they've practiced it. And their reaction time is super quick. Same thing with a free throw. Basketball players practice hours and hours of shooting free throws so that at the right moment, when it's time to shoot a free throw, they can react appropriately and shoot that free throw. And they want to do it without thinking, autonomically. So, if you were to talk to a professional basketball player, they would say that they have all sorts of anchors or methodologies set up to do and shoot that free throw. So if you watch someone like Stephen Curry, he has a very specific routine that he does. Every time he's going to shoot a free throw, he clicks into that sort of trance, that methodology, an idea, maybe a routine that they're going to do. And so he bounces the basketball once and shoots. He doesn't stop to think. He doesn't do a whole lot of things. If you've watched him play at all, he'll put his little mouth guard in the side of his mouth, and he chews on it a bit. And I know that sounds strange, but go watch him shoot a free throw. He is 1,000% consistent. And that has helped him to be able to be more consistent with shooting free throws. And that makes it so that his reaction time is quick. And the more his reaction time is quick like that, the less he'll be able to respond and interrupt that pattern with other things that are going on. But this can also be used in a negative way. Sometimes if you're reacting too quick, it sometimes allows you to feel or experience an emotion that you reacted with but didn't mean to react with. And instead, you might have wanted to respond. You might have wanted to think about it a little bit. And so what you can do is you can create situations where you can respond better, where you can respond and take a moment. You can create a habit of really thinking about what it is that you're going to say before you say it. This is hard. In some cases, you have to be quick on your reaction. And so in those moments when you have to have a quick reaction, sometimes it's important that you build in the background. So how can you do that? Well, you can train for it. You can teach yourself through lots and lots of repetition. You can prepare those things in the background to get ready so that when it's time to react, you can trust your autonomic reactions. And this takes practice. And without a doubt, if you want to improve your reactions, you have to practice. You have to put in time behind the scenes, ahead of time. If you want to respond better, if you want to be thought out, sometimes you have to prepare things that are routines. If somebody says something that could possibly get you angry, right? And remember, I believe that you do your emotions. So if that's the case, you have to be able to get in the way of those scenarios so that you don't just react, but instead you have to be able to interrupt that pattern and be able to say to yourself, okay, what else could this mean? You have to create some mental processes, and you have to break and rebuild the patterns maybe that you would create of the things that maybe typically get you angry, or have gotten you angry in the past because you gave them certain meaning. And so you have to prepare a little bit more, and maybe you can create some routines. I know that sounds funny, but remember, I have a dance background. Routines are what we do. We create routines that we can rely on and that we can practice over and over again so that in the moment when it's most important, those routines will come out as perfect as possible. So we have to learn to respond better and maybe even learn to react better. But we have to plan for those things. We have to prepare. We have to practice. We have to learn new skills. And for each of us, we may have to learn a new skill, a new meaning for situations that maybe we've responded or reacted to poorly in the past. So if we kick back to joy for a second, what kind of things in your world allowed you to react with joy or respond with joy? Now remember, joy is a state of mind characterized by contentment. So when have you been content? Think about a time when you've been content in your life. And remember it. Imagine it very clearly. Think about a time when you felt love, Think about that time. Think about a time when you've maybe felt satisfaction. Something was very satisfying to you. And maybe think of another time where you felt pleasure. All of these things combine together to create or to be in that joy category. And these things are typically things that we talk about being happy. Remember, we want to talk about happy as maybe more of a verb, doing happy, right? Doing joy. And if you can do this, if you can do it right now, if you've thought about something that made you happy, then you can see clearly that you're capable of doing your emotions. How cool is that? For me, if I want a quick fix of thinking about being happy, I can remember a time when I was, maybe 14. Maybe I was 13 or 12. I don't remember exactly. But I remember we walked into Disneyland, and for the first time, my mother said, "Yeah, go off on your own. Go play. We'll meet up at this time." And I thought, wait a second, you're going to let me go by myself in Disneyland? Oh my goodness, this was so exciting. I was so happy. And I remember running to the first place. I was going to go to the Tom Sawyer's Island. I'm not sure if it's even there anymore. But I remember running there at full speed thinking, oh my gosh, I get to do whatever I want. And all I have to do is be back at this time. Holy cow, I was so happy. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember running through the tunnels of Tom Sawyer Island and being a kid. And it was so fun. And that was pure joy. And it was so happy. And what a great time. What a great feeling to remember. And it's so easy to go back to that place and remember it and breathe like that and feel that way. And I can do it anytime I'd like. I can think about it anytime I'd like. And it helps me to respond or react with a happy or joyful feeling. Try it. What is a time that you felt joyful or happy? Think about it. Think about everything about it. Remember what you saw and what you felt and how things looked and how they sounded. Remember everything about that joyful state, that happy state. And just remember it as clearly as you can. That's pretty easy, right? Anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. Just a little bit of joy, a little bit of happy. And maybe, until the next podcast, maybe try to do this on purpose, just because. Just because you can. And that's it. I invite you to give it a try and experience some happy moments. Go back and remember. And we'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Hey lifers, we expect upgrades to the base operating functions of the things like our phones, cars, and even refrigerators. Why then has it not been made a priority that we upgrade the operating systems of our emotional states? We dance around the subject of emotional mastery from a young age. We have so much more knowledge in today's world, yet we're still teaching outdated methods of emotional education, if any are being taught at all. It's time for a change. It's time for an upgrade to our emotional education. Let me help you learn how to do that. Pick up your free copy of Every Minute at everyminutebook.com.